Are you a man looking for an intensive program to help you overcome sexually addictive behaviors? Gateway to Freedom is your answer. Gateway to Freedom is a 3-day workshop for men seeking to overcome any destructive sexual habits. Whether married, single, or divorced, Gateway to Freedom will help men regain hope for a new life of purity and real contentment. The workshop is conducted by experts in the field of sexual addiction recovery with decades of combined experience. Read testimonials of workshop alumni at gatewaymen.com. Get all the info and register online at gatewaymen.com or call 1-800-49-PURITY.
Hi, my name is Jonathan, and I'm the founder of the Gateway to Freedom Workshop. I want to personally invite you to be part of our next workshop coming up January 8th through the 10th in Pennsylvania. So call us today at 1-800-49-PURITY or visit gatewaymen.com.
Welcome to Pure Sex Radio, training men, educating women. Are you ready to get real and start living each day in purity? This dynamic program is designed to educate, encourage, and equip listeners with the tools necessary for living a life of sexual purity. Pure Sex Radio brings you the best in mobile talk radio. Listen to real-life struggles, learn how to overcome lust, pornography, and sex addiction, and get serious about purity. Your hosts for Pure Sex Radio are Jonathan Doherty and Stephen Cervantes. Jonathan is the director of Be Broken Ministries and founder of the Gateway to Freedom Workshop for Men. Stephen is the founder of the Hope Counseling Center. Visit us online at puresexradio.com. And now, please welcome Jonathan and Stephen on Pure Sex Radio.
Good day, radio listeners. Welcome to this week's edition of the Pure Sex Radio broadcast. We're so glad to have you here with us. My name is Jonathan. I'm here with Stephen. Stephen, how are you today?
I am richly blessed and favored by my Father above.
Awesome. Well, folks, this is Christmas time, and that's a wonderful reminder for us to celebrate the greatest gift that was ever given to all of mankind, and that was the gift of God's only Son, Jesus Christ. And to me, what's always so special and wonderful about this season is just this idea of Emmanuel, God with us. That is truly amazing. If we could spend the rest of our lives just trying to ponder that one idea, and it should and will overwhelm us, because to think that the God, the creator of the universe, the one who spoke and breathed stars into existence, decided to clothe himself in humanity and be one of us, and not just be one of us, but be with us, and then to take on and live the life that we couldn't, die the death that we should have, and then raise from the dead to give us a free gift of eternal life. That is truly an amazing and wonderful celebration to have. So I hope that this season you are enjoying that you are really reveling in that beauty and in that grace that God has given to us. I also want to just remind you that as we come to the end of the year, this is a significant time of year for our ministry, because we rely on financial support in order to continue doing what we're doing with the radio program, with our mentoring, and with our workshops, and just all the various other resources and ministry that we are doing here through Be Broken Ministries. And year-end giving is pretty significant for our ministry. Up to 20% of our annual budget comes through year-end giving. So for us to be able to start out 2016 in a healthy position, really being able to go where God is leading, we would invite you to prayerfully consider how you might be able to come alongside of us in the end of the year here and support our ministry. In order to do that, you can simply go to our website at puresexradio.com. That's puresexradio.com, and click on the donate button, and you can learn more about how to partner with us. Well, Stephen, this week we're going to be talking about something or trying to unpack something that I share a little bit in our Gateway to Freedom workshops. And
yes, let me jump
Sure.
in and sort of tell you what I was thinking, because I prompted you before we turned these mics on. I said, I want to explore this issue that you make that if you've never been to our workshops, I'll tell you how they're set up. Jonathan will do a teaching for an hour, then the guys will get a break, and then they'll come in a group for an hour and a half. So I tell you what I see. I do the groups. There's a couple of counselors. There's lots of counselors around the country that do groups. But I do one of the groups with a group of guys, and they just come out of Jonathan's teaching. And if you put, like one of your fingers in the center of your hand, they all come back from group going, look, I learned something. I've been doing all about me thinking. It's all about me. And it's like one finger and a handful of fingers, but it's all about me. And I learned something, and they come out of his talk with the lights are on, and they're putting pieces together, and they got a concept that they didn't get before. Now, they have no idea what to do with this, but they have a new concept. And I thought, I really want to unpack this idea of it's all about me. Mm-hmm. So how would you sort of give them some background on what you're trying to do?
Yeah, so what I'm saying, I know it's hard to get a visual through radio, but the idea is when I put my one hand into my other palm, what I'm essentially saying is, okay, this is you. So my one hand that's going into my other palm, the finger that's on this palm is essentially saying, this is you. And then I kind of draw a circle in the air around it and say, and everything else is revolving around you. So the idea here that I'm trying to get across is at the heart, at the fundamental basic level, the paradigm, so to speak, of a man who eventually becomes obsessed with sexual brokenness and with the secrecy and all of that, the deception that comes along with pornography and sexual sin, it's this paradigm. It's this paradigm that eventually gets a person to say, it's all about me. Everything has to point to me. My wife, my kids, my environment, my work, my reputation. Everything ultimately has to raise me up to essentially glorify me. And if it doesn't, I'm going to throw a 2-year-old fit.
You know what's interesting as you say that? That's a great word picture that you're painting. It sort of, I think, would help a wife hearing that go, that's why this marriage is kind of lonely. I'm in here wanting you to come out and engage me, and you're doing all about you thinking. Mm-hmm. And so when you're doing all about you thinking, you're not so interested in me, and you don't really ask me what I think. You don't help me work through my issues when you're doing all about me thinking.
And that's just it. Those are mutually exclusive things. So when I'm making life all about me, meaning it's not just, and we're going to get into this a little bit later about the difference between self-care and kind of self-centeredness. This whole idea of all about me thinking, it's mutually exclusive from selfless caring and attention toward others. So that's why a wife can get so frustrated, because she's maybe trying to pour herself out to her husband. She's trying to draw him out, and he is essentially saying, listen, I'm not even thinking on those terms. Now, to back up a little bit here, sometimes I get perplexed looks in these teaching sessions when I'm going into the all about me thing, when I'm talking about this self-centeredness.
Could I pause you? Don't forget your thought, where you're going.
Sure.
But what just made sense to me about a wife is, what kind of wife marries kind of a self-absorbed, self-centered man? And it's the opposite. A very pleasing wife will find a very into himself, and she'll work really hard at pleasing, and he'll be there, and he'll be glad she's working so hard at pleasing because it makes life good. But
and then she gets exhausted.
And then she's exhausted and unsatisfied. But an unhealthy person will find another unhealthy person. Don't you think that makes sense?
Yes, and obviously there's just degrees to that, And a lot of times we would look at the pleasing wife, the one who is overly extending herself to try to please her, and we look at her and we say, oh, well, that's noble brokenness there. And then we look at the guy who's being completely self-absorbed. We say, "Oh, that's totally unhealthy. That's immoral, brokenness." And the way I would look at it is that's true, but fundamentally, that's both of that is unhealthy. Because it is more noble to pour yourself out and those kind of things, but there is an unhealthy level to that too, where you're kind of shredding your own health by trying to pour into this other person, and that's not
who can
healthy
receive
either.
it, take it in, process it,
which
use
is why
it.
eventually she just gets burned out. She just gets completely
worn out.
exhausted.
That's right, because all her pleasing didn't make him come out and embrace her, right?
Yeah. Now some of the perplexed looks I get is, so when I'm talking about this, these guys might be thinking, but wait a second, I don't see myself as a completely, I mean, on one level they go, yeah, I get it. And then they go, wait a second, I'm not really this self-absorbed person, which is funny because sometimes that kind of tells us that, no, you really are. Because one of the things about pride, because we could say these are parallel here, this idea of complete self-absorption and pride. Pride is one of the only sins that's hidden to the self. For instance, Stephen, if you commit murder, are you unaware that you are murdering somebody?
If
you lie, are you totally unaware that you're lying? If you commit adultery, do you go, "Oh, this isn't my wife. Wait, what's going?" There's all these other sins that we are totally aware that we are committing, but yet, when's the last time you've heard a person that comes up and says, "Oh man, I really blew it with pride yesterday"? I mean,
nobody says that.
No, and so this idea of self-centeredness, there's a blockage where somebody can't really get that, because guys will say, I don't really. It doesn't seem like I act like a self-centered person because, and then what do they end up doing? They start giving the list of all the things they do for their wife.
Oh, right.
I wash the car. I bring money home. I do. I pay the bills. Those kind of things, and they're not seeing the disconnect that, listen, you paying your wife's insurance on her car, that is not a selfless act. That is, you can still be completely a self-centered person and functionally managing your life. Does that make sense?
Yes, and they're doing a lot of good things, and they're using that for cover, right?
Right.
And they're saying, I can't help it. My job's demanding. I have to be at work all the time, or I'm busy with the yard and this house. Whatever they're doing stuff. And even in their fantasy escaping, right? They still hide, try to look normal, look like they're doing commuter work or paying the bill, whatever. They try to look normal, but they're always distant, and you wonder why.
And if you think about it, think about why so many of the guys that come into our workshops and that we start delving into this idea with them, think about why so many of them are so incredibly hectic and busy in their lives. If you have come to believe at a core level that life is all about me, so in other words, you're saying it has to revolve around me, then you can see how that leads to a frantic pace of life. Meaning, at work, I've got to be the best. At home, I've got to look like I got it all together. At church, man, we better look polished. And you start building this image that causes you to look as if you're worthy of being the center of it all. Instead of, let me share with you my brokenness and where I fail and where I'm weak and where I struggle and I'm confused and I don't have the answers. And instead, we cover all of that up because we've come to believe, no, it's got to be about me, and therefore I've got to make it appear to others that it is about me. And so we're frantic.
And I'm sort of playing the wife's role, plus I want to explore it with you. But when a wife goes to a husband, what you're saying is his response, right? He's busy, he's even frantically doing these things, and he's got great excuses, but he has very poor insight about himself. He just knows to do busy things, right? And so that confuses her because she says, okay, let's talk about us. And he's stuck in the me thinking, right? All about me thinking. And she goes, okay, explore me. Let's dig deep. Well, I'm busy, and I'm doing a lot of things, and maybe we can do it later. She'll get flagged off, right? But really, he's doing one all about me thinking. And what happens then? What happens when his wife comes to him and says, hey, come on, let's sit on the couch and talk and really work through this issue. We got a problem with the kids, the money, our future plans. Come on, let's go back and forth. What happens?
Well, I think it gets back to what you were just now saying about having poor insight about himself. Because if you think about it, Stephen, when we start getting these guys to peel back the layers, what do we find? We find a scared little boy on the inside who's been pedaling as fast as he can.
Yes, that's good.
And so when a wife comes to him and then says, you know what, little boy is fun, little boy is charming, little boy is, makes me smile, but you know what, I need man to come out every now and then. I'm not saying get rid of little boy. I'm just saying I need man also.
Right.
And that's when this guy looks at his wife and he goes and starts washing the car. He goes because he is scared to death of actually taking a look at himself in a vulnerable, honest way. And this is the difference between, there's this one thing that we're talking about where it's all about me and it really creates a facade. There's this other part that says, part of healthy relationships and even healthy self is being able to look at yourself in a really honest way.
Yes.
So can we talk a little bit about the difference between saying, I'm looking at myself in an unhealthy way and therefore propping myself up versus looking at myself in a healthy way and kind of exposing who I really am?
Yes, and see, that's really where I wanted to go with this, but I got to make one comment on what you just said. So here's a good example of this kind of a guy. He says to himself, my wife is upset with me. She's really in a bad mood. I should do something. Okay, I'll go clean her car. I'll wash it and vacuum and fill it full of gas. My wife's upset, and that's what you just said.
Right.
And that's perfect, because if you don't know what to really do, you're going to try to do something, but that's almost like little boy thinking, go clean up your room or put your clothes away because mom yells at me when the clothes are out, and maybe that'll change the world.
Well, isn't it interesting, too, that generally where we go as men in those situations where, our wife is coming at us and essentially inviting us to sort of put our heart on the table, is where we go as men is we don't go toward talking about it. We go toward action. Let me just go do something, which it may feel noble in the moment. And even some wives may feel, appreciated in that, but it doesn't really ever address that poor insight into himself. It doesn't really address the idea of saying, listen, I can still be innocent like a child on the inside, but I got to grow up emotionally and be able to talk to my wife about difficult things.
So now you're stumbling upon why I wanted to have this conversation, because these guys will come out of the training session with this great aha. Oh, I've been making it all about me. I get it. And on one level, that's a very good logical thought, and it's a very good concept. But I want to step back from it and just talk about, all about me, or maybe even a version of that, me thinking. When is it healthy to do me thinking, and how much me thinking is okay? And is it okay to think about me? We're taught that as Christians, sacrifice. But come on, you got to go to the gym and work on your body. You don't take somebody else to the gym and watch them sweat their body and think you did a good thing. No, you got to work. You got to brush your teeth, right? You got to take time to take care of yourself. You better do your spiritual work. You can't just go watch a show and be done. You got to do your work. So here's the dilemma I'm having. How do we help these guys? And how can we give them a handle, and especially wives? Why did I develop such all about me thinking? Because you line up a bunch of people, and not everybody's doing all about me thinking. But every time you find a guy with a sexually addictive behavior, he's always doing all about me thinking. So what happened to him? So I start thinking about this me concept and taking care of me, and when is it okay to take care of me, and when's it not okay to take care of me? When am I doing it excessively all about me? So I start thinking, okay, think about birth of a child, and the death of a senior citizen. In the very beginning, the baby, it has to be 100% about that baby. Can't wipe himself, can't go get his own diapers, can't open a jar of food, can't do anything. It's 100% about the baby. It's all about the baby thinking, right? And then the senior citizen on the other end, he has lived a rich life. He's blessed. He has more stuff than he needs. And so he can give a little time away, and he put a little money aside so he can share his money with neighbors or friends or people in crisis. And if this senior planned, decently, there's a lot of him to give away. And he goes, and I'll use my dad as an example. If my dad had $20 in his wallet and any of his kids came over, when you left with his $20. He said, "Here, put some gas in your car. Here, I've got this." Now, he could have kept all those $20 bills for himself.
Sure, yeah.
But he said, "I have a rich, full life. I'm a happy man. And if I can bless you, I will give to you." And it's what Jesus said. It's better to give than it is to be the taker all the time. It's just satisfying, So that's little about me thinking versus all about me thinking. And it's the journey of life. And how is it that some of us make it through that journey and don't get stuck in all about me thinking? And what happens that we get consumed with all about me thinking when we're 1, 2, 3, okay, when we're 10, okay, at 20 and at 30, at 40, we're still doing all about me thinking.
And I think that's a great way to picture it in terms of the timeline, because and I don't mean this to be I don't mean this to come across derogatory or anything, but if you think about it, the way you're describing it, if a person is, 40 years old, if a man's 40 years old and he is completely wrapped up in all about me thinking, he's still a baby emotionally. And, again, I don't mean that to be offensive or anything, but it's kind of like in the example you gave, I think it was great, because it's like, yeah, when you're a baby, there's on that level, there's a necessary attention that's required. But keep in mind that is the baby itself necessarily, in some ways it's all about, but we don't exactly know all that a baby's thinking when they're 6 months old.
Eat.
We do know
what body hurts.
We do know what they're thinking when they're hungry.
Yeah.
It's like, give me food right now.
Right.
So, and so I think there is a point at which but notice in that example too, where's the care coming from? It has to come from outside of that baby. He's got to be able to have parents or caretakers that can care for him. Now, when that child gets to 12 years old, then that child is starting to have thoughts about themselves and how do they think about themselves, and they do still need outside care.
Yes, but here's where I was going. I was thinking, if you're loved well and you're taught to share, you learn to share.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say is if there's healthy care going on, then you know what happens to that child? They have a healthy sense of self, right? They understand that I'm a human being created in the image of God. That is good. That is beautiful. That is precious. And so therefore, they're not encased in shame, which is part of what ends up happening later on in terms of if a guy gets wrapped up in sexual sin. But if you have a healthy sense of self, then I think you're able to then give of yourself, and you're able to kind of break free from that all about me thinking. But what does it require? You have to have a healthy sense of self, which means what? You have to have certain kinds of me thinking. There's healthy me thinking in the sense that says, I have to put food in my belly. I have to make sure that I'm, not walking out into the middle of the street when the cars are coming through. To think that we could go through our lives without ever thinking about ourselves is not only ridiculous, it's not good.
Yeah, even Jesus went up to the mountain to pray, right?
It said he went away often.
Get in the boat, boys. We're leaving this crowd of people.
Yeah.
So when you experience a person that's doing all about thinking, these are some notes I was just writing. That person is doing his best thinking. He can only think about taking care of himself. He's doing survival thinking. I better take care of me. Nobody takes care of me. I better take care of me. He's doing stuck thinking because it's over and over. It's not that satisfying. Well, it's really not that satisfying to do everything for you and get everything you want and to have everything that you can imagine. That's really unsatisfying.
Well, think about some of the most common stories we hear of famous individuals and professional athletes. And how many times have we heard the story that says, I got it all and I was miserable?
Yes, thank you. That's my point. But we have to challenge the thinking because somewhere the system got broken and bad thinking got picked up. Because this boy who's doing all about thinking is only coping. Mm-hmm. And he's coping with life because he doesn't know how to really love, feel love, give love. He can't get in the mainstream of love. So he's living over on the side lane of survival and walking through life in survival with taking thinking. I got to take from you because it's all about me. I got to take for me first. Mm-hmm. But that's a process that happens in childhood, and that's a process a scared little boy you were talking about grabs, and he says, I better take it first because nobody's come to give it to me. This is not a safe place. I might not have it. So I'm doing the best thinking, and when I see you, the first thing I think of is I better take because you may not be my friend. I may not see you again, and everywhere it's almost like hyper alert. Take. Think of self, all about me, survival. Do you think that's true of what's happening underneath an addict?
Yes, I absolutely think that's true. And what I see in that, and where I want to eventually help that person go, is what I see in that is a person who doesn't understand their own worth and their own value. In other words, they've created a false sense of self. They've created this idea. See, we are made, I think, to have a healthy sense of self which says, I am valuable. But there's a difference between that and saying, I'm the only valuable one in my life, meaning I'm the central and supreme and greatest value, instead of seeing I'm valued just as like every other human being is valued. In other words, you see yourself as part of a community. That's a healthy sense of self, rather than saying, I'm above everybody else and everybody better serve me, everybody better bow to me, everybody better make me the center of their world. That's unhealthy. That's bloated. That's not even, that's not what we're made to be about.
So I want you to give the answer to this, but I'm going to keep painting the picture of the stuckness of this boy. So a wife, can sort of understand what she's dealing with, or men can sort of go into themselves and get some insight. So you keep saying whatever you think should be done is healthy, because I'm still painting the picture, and we're going to run out of time. I know it. But this boy is saying, I want to be loved. At the core of my being, I want to be loved. And because it's not coming to me, I'm going to go take love. I'm trying to be loved, and the only way I know to get it is I'm going to go take it. And I'm stuck, and I'm going to do that again and again. And when I realize I can't really find love, then I can find porn. And at least porn will distract me, because I have two problems. My emotional system is broken, and I can just keep thinking about trying to take it. Nobody's giving it. And then when I can't really ever feel a sense of peace deep in my being, I need to escape into fantasy for relief.
And that's the key here. If you go down the path of all about me thinking, it leads actually to self-pity, because you'll realize that people will pull away from you because you're not connecting with humanity. You're not connecting with the community because you're saying I'm above it all. And so guess what? People are going to pull away, and then you'll have self-pity, you'll have shame, you'll have brokenness, and you'll only be able to find false substitutes or cheap substitutes for what you really need.
Gambling, do whatever. Any of the addictions are a good distraction from the pain.
And this is why I think the solution is to be able to understand your identity as a child of God. You understand who you were made to be in the image of God. And in that you can find rest, you can find peace, you can connect with others without it feeling like it's a contest. You can just truly learn what it is to give without strings attached, and really understand what love is by giving it first, and then really learn what it is to receive it. Well, we've got to wrap up there. We're glad you've been with us. If you want to explore this more, or you need help in terms of breaking free from all about me thinking, please contact us today, and we'll see you back here again next week on the Pure Sex Radio broadcast.
Pure Sex Radio is paid for by Be Broken Ministries. Visit us online at puresexradio.com.